Welcome back to CrimePod Castle. You are tuned into episode 74 of our Unsolved Mystery series, and today we're diving deep into a case that is both perplexing and truly tragic, the unsolved death of Shashank.
A story that really reminds us how quickly life can take those unexpected turns, and how even the most ordinary routines can end in extraordinary mystery.
Yeah, we're talking 2014 Hyderabad, India. Shashank, a bright, talented young software engineer, is found dead, under circumstances that initially seemed like a tragic accident. But as the investigation went on, things got a lot more complicated.
Yeah, those early assumptions were challenged pretty quickly by the lack of clear evidence, which really set the stage for the mystery that we're still talking about today.
Okay, so let's set the scene for our listeners. Who was Shashank? And what do we know about his life leading up to that night?
So Shashank was 26 years old, a rising star at a top IT company in Hyderabad. He had just gotten a promotion, actually, and was known for being dedicated and brilliant, a colleague anyone would be lucky to have.
Sounds like he was on the right track. What about his life outside of work?
Well, from what we can gather, he was a bit of an introvert. He loved coding, even in his free time, a true techie, but he also enjoyed reading and spending time with his close friends. His family described him as a loving son and brother, someone who brought a lot of joy to their lives.
So, seemingly ordinary life, right? Made extraordinary by its sudden and mysterious end. So let's talk about that night, October 15th, 2014. What do we actually know about Shashank's last movements?
Okay, so he left the office around 8 p.m. That night, he told his colleagues he was heading home. And we have CCTV footage that backs that up. Seems pretty routine, right? But he never actually made it home.
And this is where things take that chilling turn that you mentioned earlier. So tell us, what did investigators find or not find at the scene where his body was discovered?
His body was found the next morning near a deserted road on the outskirts of the city. The autopsy revealed severe head trauma, which immediately made them think foul play was involved. However, the injuries weren't consistent with a typical car accident, which is what they initially thought it was.
Okay, so right away there's some red flags. What about his car?
This is where it gets even more puzzling. His car was found abandoned kilometers away from his body. And here's the thing. It was undamaged, no signs of a struggle inside.
So how did he get from his car to that deserted road? It's a big question, isn't it?
Huh.
Was he forced out of the car? Did he leave willingly? Did someone drive him there?
Exactly. And as investigators dug deeper, they found more inconsistencies. Shashank's phone and wallet were both missing, which pointed towards a possible robbery.
Right. But if it was a robbery, why wasn't his car damaged? Why was there no sign of a struggle at the car? It doesn't quite add up.
You're right, it feels like there are some key pieces missing. Investigators started looking into Shashank's life, hoping to find some kind of motive. And what they discovered was that he had been feeling stressed at work. He'd even expressed concerns about a difficult client meeting.
Now, this is where it starts to feel like a thriller, right? Could that workplace stress be connected to his death? Could he have been targeted?
It's definitely possible, especially given the world of tech. It's fast-paced and competitive. However, investigators couldn't find any hard evidence to actually support that theory.
So we have a young man, seemingly doing well in his life, found dead under very suspicious circumstances and a lot of unanswered questions. Before we get into the possible explanations for what happened to Shashank, let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture. What was the tech scene like in Hyderabad back in 2014? Was it a particularly high-pressure environment?
Absolutely. Hyderabad in 2014 was booming. Tech companies were popping up left and right, attracting young talent from all over India. This rapid growth brought a lot of pressure to succeed, long working hours, and really fierce competition. So yeah, it was a high-stakes environment which could absolutely contribute to stress and maybe even conflict.
So that's really helpful context. So within this very high-pressure environment, we have Shashank, a recently promoted software engineer, expressing concerns about work and this difficult client meeting. And then he winds up dead. It's a lot to take in, right?
It is. It makes you wonder, could that intense pressure of the tech world have played some part in this tragedy? We'll dig deeper into the various theories and examine the evidence, or the lack of it, in the next part of our deep dive. But before we move on, let's look at the specific details of Shashank's work. Do we know anything about the project he was heading up, or the nature of this difficult client meeting?
Right, because those details could be crucial in understanding the motives and connections here. So what can you tell us?
Unfortunately, the project and the client are a bit of a mystery. We know Shashank was leading a team to develop a new software application, but the specifics of the application and its purpose haven't been made public.
That's interesting. Is it common for tech companies in India to be so secretive about their projects, even during a police investigation?
Well, it's not unusual for companies to want to protect their intellectual property, especially in a competitive market like the tech scene in Hyderabad. They might cite concerns about trade secrets or impacting ongoing investigations, which makes sense to a point, but it does make it harder to piece together what might have been happening in Shawshank's professional life.
Hmm. So we have this wall of secrecy around his work, which just adds to the intrigue. What about the difficult client meeting? Any leads there?
No official word on who the client was, but there are rumors online that it was a big government agency. If that's true, it could explain why things are being kept so quiet.
A government agency. Wow, that definitely raises the stakes. You mentioned rumors online. Has the online community been actively trying to solve this case?
Oh, absolutely. This case has blown up online, especially among tech people and true crime fans. There are forums dedicated to discussing it, analyzing the evidence, and proposing theories. Some have even taken it upon themselves to do their own investigations, looking into Shawshank's online activity, trying to find any digital breadcrumbs that might help shed light on this mystery.
That is fascinating. It's incredible how the internet can be such a powerful tool for collaborative investigation. Have any of these online sleuths turned up anything significant?
Well, there's been a ton of interesting observations and theories, but nothing concrete that would actually solve the case. However, there's been a lot of discussion around the possibility that Shawshank might have stumbled across something sensitive or illegal during his work, something that someone might have wanted to keep quiet.
Now, that's a chilling thought, but not outside the realm of possibility, especially if we're talking about a high-profile government client.
Oh.
But let's get back to the facts for a moment. We've got the severe head trauma, the abandoned car miles from the body, the missing phone and wallet, and there's that open car door, which we talked about earlier.
Right, that open door is a key piece of the puzzle. Why would he leave it open? Did he get out willingly, maybe to meet someone, only to be forced into another car? Or was he forced out, running in a panic?
You know, it reminds me of another unsolved case, where a car door being left open was a crucial piece of evidence. In that case, it turned out the victim had left it open as a way to signal to someone passing by that something was wrong. Do you think it's possible here?
It's an interesting connection, and it's definitely something to consider. Could he have been trying to signal for help? Or was it just an oversight in a moment of panic? We just don't know without any witnesses.
It's like every little detail in this case opens up a new world of possibilities, but none of them quite lead to a clear solution. What about the lack of a struggle at the car? If he was forced out, wouldn't there be signs of resistance?
That's a good point. It suggests he either knew his attacker or that he was completely taken by surprise and overpowered quickly. Or, as we've touched on, maybe the whole scene was staged to mislead investigators.
Staged. Now that adds a whole other layer of complexity. If the scene was staged, it implies someone planned this out very carefully, which suggests a much darker motive.
Absolutely. It means someone went to a lot of trouble to create a very confusing and misleading trail. But why? What would be the point of such a complex deception?
It's got me thinking, what motive would justify such an elaborate setup? Let's go back to that possible link with Shawshank's work. Could it be that his death was somehow tied to the project he was leading or that client he was dealing with?
Definitely a strong possibility. Let's say, for instance, that Shawshank found out about some illegal activity or corruption within the project, maybe something involving his client. If influential people were involved, they'd have a pretty big motive to silence him, and making his death look like something else entirely could be a way to cover their tracks.
That's a chilling thought, but it makes a terrifying amount of sense. But we're still missing a key piece of the puzzle. Who could have actually done this, and how did they manage to do it without leaving any trace?
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? The lack of solid evidence and all the secrecy surrounding Shawshank's work make it really difficult to pinpoint suspects or figure out what actually happened.
This case is like a labyrinth. There are twists and turns everywhere, and every path we try to follow seems to hit a dead end. But I just can't believe there aren't any answers out there. Somewhere, hidden in the details, there's gotta be a clue that can help us solve this. What are some other possibilities we haven't considered yet? What about his personal life? Could there be something there that might be a clue?
You know, that's a great point. While the investigation focused mostly on Shawshank's work life, we can't ignore his personal relationships. Could there be someone in his personal life who had a reason to want to harm him? Or someone he confided in who might have information that's relevant to the case?
We know he was a bit of an introvert, but even introverts have people they're close to. Did investigators find any secrets or hidden conflicts in his personal life?
Officially, no. But we have to remember investigations rely on what people are willing to share. There's always a chance there's more to the story than we know. Perhaps there was a secret relationship, a hidden debt, a grudge that no one knew about.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, and with each layer, the mystery just keeps getting deeper. Fascinating and frustrating all at the same time. But before we get too caught up in speculation, let's focus back on the evidence. Is there anything else that strikes you as potentially important, even if it seems small or unrelated?
One detail that I find really interesting, and one that hasn't gotten much attention, is that Shashank's laptop was never found. It wasn't in his car, and it's never turned up anywhere else.
His laptop. That's odd. Why would his laptop be missing?
That's the big question, isn't it? Could it contain information that's vital to understanding his death?
If it was stolen, wouldn't whoever took it have tried to sell it or use it by now?
Not necessarily. If the laptop has sensitive info on it, the person who took it might want to keep it hidden, wipe it clean, or even destroy it completely to stop anyone from getting to the data.
So the missing laptop could be a clue in itself, suggesting someone wanted to make sure a certain information never came to light.
Exactly. It adds another layer of intrigue to an already confusing case.
It really makes you wonder, what else could we be missing? Are there other seemingly insignificant details that might hold the key to cracking this case wide open?
It's definitely possible. Sometimes, even the tiniest detail can be the most revealing. The challenge is recognizing those details and understanding their significance.
Well, I'm determined to keep digging until we find some answers. What about you, listeners? Have you noticed any details or connections that we might have missed? We'd love to hear your theories and insights.
That's right. Sometimes a fresh perspective is all it takes to breathe new life into a cold case. So put on your detective hats and let's see if we can solve this together.
We'll be back in the next part of our deep dive with more analysis, more theories, and hopefully some answers. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's possible. Sometimes the smallest detail can make all the difference, right? The challenge is spotting those details and understanding what they mean.
Well, I, for one, am determined to keep digging until we find some answers. What about you, listeners? Have you noticed any details or connections that we might have overlooked? We'd love to hear your theories and insights.
That's right. Sometimes a fresh perspective is all it takes to shed new light on a cold case. So put on your detective hats and let's see if we can crack this case together.
We'll be back in the next part of our deep dive with more analysis, more theories, and hopefully some answers. Stay tuned.
You know, it's amazing how one missing thing, like Shawshank's laptop, can just raise so many questions and maybe even hold some answers. It shows how important it is to be thorough in an investigation.
You're right. Every detail matters in a case like this. Speaking of details, there's one thing we haven't talked about yet that I find really strange. The place where Shashank's body was found.
Oh, you mean that deserted road on the outskirts of the city? What about it?
It wasn't just any deserted road. From what I've read, that area had a bit of a reputation as a dumping ground. Not for your average trash, but for things people wanted to disappear, things they didn't want traced back to them.
Wow, it's kind of creepy, right? You're saying the location itself could be a clue?
Yeah, think about it. If you wanted to get rid of a body and make it look like something else, a place with a reputation like that would be perfect.
It's almost too convenient, isn't it? Like whoever did this was using the reputation of that location to their advantage.
Exactly. Was the location just a matter of convenience for the killer, or was it a deliberate attempt to throw investigators off the scent?
It's a chilling thought, but it seems to fit with what we've seen so far in this case. Misdirection, inconsistencies, missing pieces. Like someone was trying to create a puzzle that was impossible to solve.
And that leads us back to the big question we're trying to answer here. What happened to Shashank? We've explored the main theories, looked at the evidence, and uncovered some intriguing details. But we still don't know the truth.
It can be frustrating. We have all these pieces, but they just don't seem to fit together. Or maybe we're missing that one crucial piece that would make everything clear.
Maybe. But even without a definitive answer, we've learned a lot about Shashank, his life, and how complex the world around him really was.
We've seen the pressure of the tech world, the secrecy around his work, and the dangers that could be lurking just out of sight. All of it might have come together to create this perfect storm.
We've also seen how even an ordinary life can be turned upside down by extraordinary circumstances, leaving behind so many questions and a desperate need for answers.
So where do we go from here? What happens to a case like this when all the leads go cold?
It doesn't have to end here. Sometimes all it takes is a fresh perspective, a new piece of information, or some kind of technological breakthrough to bring a cold case back to life.
And that's where you come in, our listeners. We've shared what we found, explored the possibilities, but we don't have all the answers. Maybe you do.
If you've been following along, if anything we've discussed has triggered a thought, a memory, or a connection, please reach out to us.
Even the smallest detail, something you might think is unimportant, could be the missing piece that helps bring justice for Shashank and closure for his family and friends.
Remember, every unsolved mystery is a story waiting to be told, a puzzle waiting to be solved. And sometimes it's the combined effort, everyone working together to find the truth, that makes a difference.
So keep those theories coming, keep talking about it, and never give up hope that even the most baffling mysteries can be solved. Who knows? Maybe one of you listening right now holds the key to solving this case.
On that note, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the unsolved case of Shawshank. It's been a journey filled with twists and turns and so many unanswered questions. But it's a journey that reminds us how important it is to keep searching for truth, even when things are uncertain.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle for more deep dives into India's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. And if you have any thoughts or theories about this case, head over to our website or social media pages and share them with us.
Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and as always,
Keep digging for the truth.
we'll see you on the next deep dive.